ladies and gentlemen, we are here with a brand new show. I am joined with my co-host and partner in crime here for this show. This is Zero Issue. I am Adam Ronan. This is my good buddy, Trevor. Trevor, thank you for being on the show and doing this with me.
Yeah, nice to be here.
So what are we kind of doing? We're going to talk about comic books, right? So We're going to pick stuff that maybe people have already read or places that we want to start reading within comics, and we're going to talk about it. Am I wrong?
No,
okay.
Not wrong at all.
So the notion is this: we're going to pick some series, we're going to read it, and then we're basically going to book club. We're going to be joined by Boss Battle Gordy, and we're going to talk about the issues at hand. The first one we want to start with is Batman, because arguably you would say he's probably the most important comic book character of all time, minus Superman. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't know about important. I think
influential.
I think I lay my allegiances pretty clear with the shirt that I wore today.
That's true, and that's fine.
But I think he's probably the most popular.
Yeah.
Like, anyone who has any kind of interest in Batman or in comic books probably would lean towards Batman first. And then unless you're, Batman's super popular, so I don't like him. That's fine. Lots of people are that way. I used to be that way. I read a lot of Batman now just because I read good authors and I read good artists. And they happen to be on a lot of Batman books, including the one that we're gonna look at today, which is Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo.
So this was the beginning of the New 52 that launched in 2011, right?
Yes.
And the arc we're going to be talking about today is?
Court of Owls.
Okay, so, and you think this is a good starting point for maybe people that aren't into Batman and wanting to get into it, and also a good place to jump back into Batman if you haven't been around for a while, right?
Yeah, or any new comic book reader, really. I mean, one of my favorite things about the run is because it's part of the New 52, it kind of blazes its own path, but it also pays homage to what came before it, and it really delves deep into what makes Batman an interesting character. You know, you have those detective moments, you have the Bruce Wayne moments, you even have cameos by the Bat family. There are things that I dislike about it, and there's things that plenty of people will dislike about it. There's no piece of art that is absolutely perfect. But I do think for anyone who's interested in comic books or has even a slight interest in Batman, that it's really the best place to start.
And that, my friends, is what this show is all about. So welcome to the first episode of Zero Issue. We are going to sit down and we're going to read through this, and then we will be back and we're going to talk about the arc of Court of Owls with the New 52 Batman. Shall we dig in?
Yeah. White guy stuff.
Hey! Boom!
Beware the Court of Owls that watches all the time, ruling Gotham from a shadow perch behind granite and lime. They watch you at your hearth, they watch you in your bed. Speak not a whispered word of them, or they'll send a Talon for your head.
And we are back. We have read the entire arc, and hopefully you have too, so we can be all caught up, because one thing to note, we're going to talk about the story. So obviously this is spoilers for a 6-year-old comic book arc, so if you haven't read it, you should have by now. You remember Gordy.
Boss Battle Gordy here.
And you remember Trevor from 2 minutes ago. So guys, let's dig in. So we read the arc. You think this is a great place to start? I also think this is a great place to start, because if I can say, I was a huge fan when New 52 launched, and Batman is my all-time favorite superhero. So I kind of also nudged this in the direction that we should start with Batman. But I was a huge fan of when they relaunched Batman with New 52. So let's get everyone's opinion. Let's first start with the aesthetics of the art style from Greg Capullo.
Well, it's one of my favorites in the industry, because I'm a big fan of classical comic book penciling. And I have a bit of an issue where I feel like a lot of pencil work isn't in the forefront as much anymore of today. It's kind of being overtaken. Pencil and inking, by the way. It's been overtaken by colorists. Colorists are kind of doing a lot of the legwork for pencilists out there with now the digital that's out there.
Sure.
So I really appreciate not only that about Capullo's artwork, where you can see just the nice fine detail work in his pencils, but he doesn't overdo it, and he has a creepiness to him.
Yeah,
that I love about Capullo.
And that's one thing that I will point out. It's hard to really kind of put what I'm thinking into words here, but there is a sketch-like quality to a lot of the artwork that I really appreciate. The ink jobs, I think, are great too, especially with a lot of the shadowing and stuff like that. But you almost do get like a pencil line art look to it that I appreciate, and I dig that whole aesthetic that they have, at least running through all of Greg Capullo's art that he did for the New 52. What do you think?
I love it, and it's really beautiful. And what's crazy about it, like when you switch between the full color and the ink is, you can really see that ink, like you can see it showing through, and I love that.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm a big fan of contrast. I love contrast. Mike Mignola is one of my very favorite comic book artists, and I think he's an absolute fucking national treasure because of his use of negative space and contrast and his own personal style. And that's what I love about Greg Capullo as well, is not only does he have an incredible style to his own, he's great with negative space and using good, dark, shadows that help the inking really stand out with his collaborator in this, Jonathan Glapion. There's a lot of people who call it the Disney Batman because he has kind of a rounder face and he's younger.
You know, that's very funny, because if we look at Bruce Wayne in this comic series, he does have a Disney Prince look to him. But the Disney Prince thing is definitely prominent. I never really thought about that until you mentioned it just now.
And it almost, what I like about that with Capullo's style is it almost has this, like, it has this two-sided coin style. When he's Bruce Wayne,
Two-Face joke.
he's got this like kind of prim and proper, like you said, Disney Prince look to him with that style when he's Bruce Wayne. But then you go into the Batman, and the way Capullo draws the cowl and the way the cowl comes into his shoulders,
yes,
and it gives him, to me, a lot of his form in it feels like the first 3 seasons of Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
The way he's shaped, where he has proper quads and he's a strong man.
Yeah.
It's like someone took that style and made it just a bit more realistic and added just a little bit more creepy factor to it.
Yeah. So, that aside, let's dig into the story of Court of Owls. This is part of a 3-arc series, right?
So I mean, its companion is really just City of Owls directly afterwards, two trade collections, 2 trade volumes, and then after that is Death of the Family, I believe,
yes,
which is his first Joker story.
Yeah.
So it's really just the first 2, and I didn't realize even when we first started the show, I didn't remember because it's been years since I read this, that it really ends on quite the cliffhanger. And,
truly does. Yeah.
And it really, you want to go to that companion volume directly afterwards.
That's true.
So that's it pretty much.
Yeah, so but you know, like we mentioned before, we are just talking about the first 7 issues in the arc. So this is just the Court of Owls. We're not getting into the other ones right now. But basically,
Court of Owls.
The story is, you know, there is a new group of assassins that want to not only kill Batman, but Bruce Wayne himself. So let's dig into that a little bit. What are the pieces of Snyder's writing and the story that you enjoyed the most?
I mean, I guess I want to start with even the opening page, where it starts just showing beautiful. My favorite part about the entire collaboration between the two is Capullo's artwork. So where it starts with Capullo's rendition of what Gotham would look like, and like I said, he has this beautiful style unto his own, where it is clearly him, and it has a bit of fantasy to it, but it's also got realism. And it reminds me of 1989 Batman, where Gotham was fucking Gotham, okay?
Yeah.
We haven't really, aside Batman Begins did it a little bit, but we haven't gotten a really good visual of what Gotham is supposed to be like in the comic books and is typically like in the comic books and film. And so we have that, it starts out that way. And then Batman's inner monologue, where he's talking about
like the Gazette and
yeah, and what Batman means to what Gotham is.
Yeah.
And then he ends up on his way, you know, Gotham is Batman. And I feel like they do show that this is a younger Batman, because I feel like in his inner monologues he does in this come off a bit arrogant.
Yeah.
In the way he talks about himself even there. But it's subtle. It's not oversaturated. And I think it's a beautiful beginning of the book that just makes you hungry for more.
Yeah.
I think it's great too, not to jump ahead too much, but later in the book there's the maze sequence and they're telling him a story that Gotham isn't Batman. And so I love the way that that's juxtaposed later when he starts losing it compared to that.
Yeah.
So the introduction of that is so cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to speak to, it's cool because we also are introduced to a younger Batman in this, but also at the same time a seasoned Batman, because, you know, we've already, Tim Drake has already moved on, and Dick Grayson's already moved on, and Damian is now Robin. Exactly. So things have happened.
this is a younger Batman that has a lot of career history, and he's only been Batman for 5 years canonically, and it's very difficult to put that into real perspective, because how does a character go through all that history that happened in nearly 75 years at this point?
That's a great point.
In 5 years. And that is one of the best things about the New 52, is it allowed such a great starting off point, as Rebirth has done recently as well for DC readers. I actually haven't read much of it. I've been pretty disappointed with the Batman Beyond comics, but we're talking about this Batman.
So, do we want to like talk about like the most interesting, the opening scene at all? Batman stops the insurrection in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about that part when you start as a start to the book with like a twist right away?
I mean, I like the excitement that it puts in immediately, and you get to see Batman kick some ass just automatically. Like I feel like it's a perfectly paced, and this is in my opinion a modern masterpiece of an arc, even though like I said I have issues with it. It's got such good pacing that once you get on the train you don't want to get off. I reread the thing in maybe an hour and a half last night, just like it was a movie. Yeah,
and that's actually one of my favorite things about the book is you start in and you instantly get a look at the New 52's Rogues Gallery, at least a good chunk of them. You got Two-Face in there and stuff like that, and the art style of them I think is just, I love it. I like how it shows the trust he has for Dick at that point.
Yes.
But then we kind of get to see who he trusts most in the next scene, when it shows before he gives the speech and his suit is telling you the security clearance of each of the people.
That's true.
Only, you know, they're all high clearance until we get to
Alfred,
and he's like maximum clearance.
Highest.
Yeah.
That is true. That's a great point.
Yeah. So next is the "Tomorrow is One Dream Away" speech, is what I call it, where Bruce, you know, goes on stage and gives his vision for the future of Gotham. I really liked the speech. I thought the writing was great. It was engaging. Like it was very, you know, it was motivational. And then in that scene, that's when he meets with March, I believe. Is it March or March?
Lincoln March.
Lincoln March.
Yeah.
And of course, when they're talking and Lincoln starts trying to get Wayne to vote for him, he wants his vote, and they start.
Like, can I count on your vote? And he's like, depends. Do I have yours? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And we get the start of the dialogue between those two, where Lincoln is kind of paralleling himself with Bruce Wayne, how they're similar, and that his vote is important to him. So it starts here, and of course it gets interrupted by
the Talon. Right.
Well,
he
overhears something.
He's lip reading.
I'm
Jim Gordon.
mixing up spots.
Yeah. Jim Gordon. Yeah, because I kind of went ahead there. So that kind of jumps into the next main tick, where he sees Harvey, and there's the investigation. What did you guys think of that? Like the detective side of it and the discussion?
And that's what you love about it, because it gives you so many different Batmans.
Yes, and that detective part, we don't just get this blurb. Is one of my favorite things about it. Is in this run in particular, there's a lot of Batman detective work, which is a big deal for me. I think first and foremost, Batman's a badass and he's big and burly and this, that, and the other thing, but he's a fucking detective. Like, that's part of the reason the police are okay with what he does, is he's a brutal ass detective with some mental issues because his parents got killed. He's a detective. He's the world's greatest detective.
I really liked the scene when I was reading it, and he's like, he smelled the turpentine or whatever, and they lit it on fire. I was like, no way! I was so excited about that part. Like, Bruce Wayne, you know, the gloves are off, someone's after Bruce Wayne, and it started really picking up for me.
Now let's talk real quick about, because the Rogues Gallery is arguably the most interesting thing about Batman. He has Batman and his Rogues Gallery, and you know, they're some of the most iconic villains of all time, and
they're all like shades of him.
So what do you think as the Owl Assassin, as a villain, as one of the newest members to the Rogues Gallery?
So I like the Talon. I think he's pretty cool, you know, as a physical threat. I think he really takes second fiddle to the real villain, which is the Court. And I think the Court is really what matters most, because they provide a new villain in the Batman mythos that is something fresh and new that he doesn't really deal with. He's dealt with Falcone and criminal mobs and things, but he's never really dealt with, outside of Justice League comics and things, a really big organization that has taken control of his city that aren't just like comic book villains. I mean, this is the type of thing that actually exists in our world, unfortunately. People with a lot of money who get in secret circles and decide things that people like the rest of us don't get to decide.
Right.
And it brings a level of identifiableness and kind of scariness, because Batman has trouble with this kind of people, and we don't even know these people who are all around us. So what could we possibly do other than try and be good people, just like Batman?
Yeah.
I like that.
What do you think of the Talon?
The Talon's cool. William Cobb is early in the comic is the Talon, which we learn later on, I mean, my favorite part of the Talon is actually his defeat, personally, but I love, he's lethal.
When he gets kicked out the window, the imagery of how they have him flying out the window with the glass and how just detailed the glass is drawn.
His clothing is like, looks like it's in motion as he's falling.
That's one of the most standout panels to me, is when he's flying through that window. It's beautiful.
I love the Sherlockian moments of his inner monologue during that, of the places he's going to hit, or how the glass shatters because the Talon knows, you know, to hit the outside of the pane rather than the center where it's made to flex. And talking about falling, and he can't grab the second level of gargoyles because he'll be at terminal velocity and will rip his arms off. Like, the realism in that is what I really love about that, the thought process.
And that's, you know, I love that you brought that up, because it really gives a strong sense of how smart and awesome the writing is in this. And what do you think about that, him as a villain being basically just a reanimated corpse, and then you find out that the court has
he was born in 1901.
I think if he was just a reanimated corpse, I'd be like, whatever, you know, comic book stuff. But the fact that he's the reanimated corpse of Dick Grayson's grandfather, that adds that level of the mystery, and like, well, okay, so what are Dick Grayson's ties to the Court of Owls? And I don't think anyone in their right mind really thinks that Dick Grayson could betray Batman, but it's, dude, the fucking owl has been in your midst this whole time, and that's another, it just keeps going deeper with the owl has been in your midst your entire fucking life, and that's what I love about the run, is just the drip dry and the pacing, and it's just a modern masterpiece.
Yeah. So Batman goes to find what happened to Alan Wayne, because he does an analysis of Alan Wayne's bones and realizes something's up with that. So he goes down to the sewers. He's doing some detective work, and the Talon shows up behind him and knocks him into the maze.
So the maze part is actually one of my favorite parts of the book, because it gives almost like a Mad Hatter-ish, like crazy type of vibe that we enjoy from Batman series and certain arcs. And it shows like the tearing Batman down and Bruce Wayne down as a human being, and also gives you credence to how just perfectly intact he is in his mind and has self-control over his thoughts, because he goes, I think it's like a week missing without food, water. The Bat family is shown searching for him, and also gives cool imagery of how tight-knit the family is in their relationships. Then the imagery starts to get very interesting with like him turning into like an owl, and then he gets stabbed in the back by the Talon. And it's almost like, I remember the first time I read it, I was like, man, he's really getting the shit kicked out of him. And to speak forward a little bit is when he gets control of his faculties again, and he's like, I am so sick of the owls, and he just starts beating the shit out of them. And it like, even though you're not watching a film and you're reading, you still get that adrenaline pump in your heart. Being like, yeah, get him, Bruce! You know? It's so cool.
I really like when Batman is taken down mentally, because he is so strong, and he is, you know, such like the perfect human, that when you tear him down mentally and then he fights back from that, it's one of those things that I really identify with, and it reminds me of a mini of Grant Morrison's Serious House on a Serious Earth, Arkham Asylum, which is one of my all-time favorite Batman books for that mental battle aspect.
And that's where I think it ends in such a great arc, because it's got all the beats in the story that you want. There is great art, there's great writing, there's emotional weight to it, and like I say, especially when Batman comes back on his own and he finally beats that initial Talon, and you just get excited. There's like, that's what stories are all about, you know, they make you feel something, and that's, I'm glad that we picked this for the first arc, because this is a great Batman arc that makes me feel so many different things as I'm reading it. It's expertly written and leaves off on a cliffhanger, which on a business side of things, that gets you to buy more Batman issues, you know?
That's comic books. Every issue ends in a cliffhanger.
Yeah, of course,
I loved it. Overall, like you said, this is a great place to start or come back to. You know, I'm not, as we launch Zero Issue, we're going from comic, you know, friends of comics, loving comics, and we're making the plunge into becoming comic fans. Fan as in fanatic.
Yep, because that's where the word
This is a great place to start if you want to start digging into comics. It is so good.
Agreed. And that's what this whole show is about. We're celebrating awesome comics. We're celebrating artists, writers, inkers, pencilers, everything about it. So we want to hear from you if you've read this. What do you think? Let's get into some discussion in the comments. We are all on Twitter, some of us more active than others.
Yeah, not very.
So let's discuss, and we'll all be in the comments talking with you. What comic series would you like us to talk about next? There's really just a million episodes we could do. There's a lot of stuff. I think that's a good place to end the episode. Shall we cinnamon roll? Does anyone know about cinnamon rolls?
What's cinnamon roll?
Bring your hand in here. Cinnamon roll!